Hello again. If your vision of professional success is to work with animals, the channel is for you. Before I introduce my next guest, let me tell you about two festivals that I attended this week, late September. One was the Migration Festival in East Yorkshire, the MIGFest. MIGFest is a celebration of migratory birds, and it is a marquee with lots of different stalls, all to do with bird watching and bird migration. Then yesterday I went up to Scotland to attend the Golden Eagle Festival. There is an entity called the South of Scotland Golden Eagle Project, and I couldn't resist going along to find out more. I'll be doing future interviews with this project. My next guest is Ken Hildebrand. Ken is training officer for the Alberta Trappers Association in Canada, and he talks with me this week about the fur-bearing mammal trapping industry. I began by asking him how somebody becomes a trapper.
In order for somebody to become a trapper, they need to be interested in the landscape, how animals are treated, how these animals work in nature, and why and when they need to be taken out. Also, there's the point of relocating animals to areas that the population has become extinct, and also for research. So you want to put a radio collar on an animal. So those are where you need to start. Once you have an interest in that, you need to find out what the rules and the regulations, what the provincial or the Canadian government laws are. You have to take a trapping course before you can get a license. Alberta has the strictest trapping regulations in the whole world.
Can you describe a year in the life of a trapper, please?
During the summer months, you cover the landscape and see how many of each different species of animals that you have, which ones need to be managed, which ones don't, trapping regulations. So during the summer, you get all that information about the mammals that are on your trap line, find out what condition their habitat is in, whether logging has caused an issue, or whether, say, for example, this year is a really dry year. And so a lot of the ponds where, like you would trap muskrats on and you have a healthy population, the water levels have dropped so low that you need to take all the muskrats out of the pond, because the pond's going to freeze over, and the muskrats would either go in their home and die, or they would freeze out and they'd starve. And then you need to take and get your equipment ready. So that means looking at all your equipment, making sure your traps are in good shape, the chains are in good shape. Also, if you're working on private land, you need to get written permission from the landowners, get ready for trapping on a registered trap line. So there's two different licenses that you get in the province of Alberta. One is a registered trap line, which is on Crown land, and the other one is a resident license, which you get on private land, where you get permission to trap on.
So it sounds like there are two really good skills that the trapper needs, which are carry out population surveys of the animals and also to assess the habitat. Is that right?
That's correct.
How would I take up trapping?
You'd have to find out the areas where you could or you could not trap, what their laws are, traps that are legal in that country. It could be different from one area to another. Most people in the cities, they don't understand trapping, yet we do have trappers that manage wildlife just in towns and cities. And so the trap The traps that they use there are very humane. The trapping times that you have to check your traps are more stringent than if you're trapping in the country. There's a check time. So in Alberta, if you're using a restraining trap right now, legally by law, you have to check them every 24 hours. During the summer, when there is no trapping season, there could be you have fox killing your chickens or you're raising pheasants. They're getting there into where you have your incubation for your eggs and stuff like that, and they'll destroy them and eat the eggs and that. So you have to get the landowner to go and get a permit to trap out of season. So that's a damage control permit. Once a landowner gets that damage control permit from Fish and Wildlife, they'll ask you who is going to be the trapper that's going to be doing the damage control. So you have to insert his name in there, and they usually check to make sure that you're using the most humane and best practices for trapping whichever wildlife, the fox or raccoon or whatever it may be.
Technology or apps, does much change?
So there's an ongoing process. A lot of people don't know it, but Alberta has one of the only trap researches in the world. In our regulations, there's a section where new traps are added or where traps are taken away. And so we have to check that every year. So these traps go to the trap research station and they're tested. And now we have such sophisticated methods of researching traps, whether they are safe and not hurting the animals and they're legal, that most of it is done now without actually taking and capturing an animal and using it as a specimen to see what damage can or will not be done to it.
Ken, what is the trapper's goal?
To keep a healthy population of the species on the landscape. A good example is beavers. They can flood a lot of land, destroy a lot of infrastructure. And if the population gets too strong, of course, there's disease. You try to keep the population down to where it can be managed and they're not causing a lot of damage to the landscape.
Ken, please can you describe your career from the beginning to date?
I had polio when I was in children's hospital. I was never supposed to be able to walk or use my arms. And when I was about 6 years old, my uncle would get me out on a day pass. And so he would take me out on his trap line. And I would see where he would explain to me the habitat of the animals, the reasons why that he had to harvest them. That's where I first started. I told my uncle, when I can get to walk and be able to use my arms properly, I'm going to become a trapper. So that's basically where I got the idea that animals need to be looked after, and it's our job to make sure that no species are endangered and that we can use the best methods to properly harvest these animals. And they're a renewable resource. Most people don't know that it takes about 9 gallons of petroleum to make a fake fur coat. An animal that is harvested by a trapper has enough brain matter to tan its own hide. And so you can make a paste, you can tan that animal, and there is very, very little chemicals that are used. But brain tanning is the best method and is used by a lot of indigenous peoples to tan hides that they're going to use. They also use, say, for example, a beaver or muskrat, they eat those. They're not only using the fur for products to keep them warm or products that they can sell to other people, they also eat those animals. So there's nothing that actually goes to waste. Also, for trappers that don't do that, we use a beaver carcass in different ways. Castorium is about over $160 a pound now, Canadian. And people don't know that. If you've ever eaten ice cream in Canada, there's beaver castor in that. There's medicine that comes out of beaver castor. And the more expensive a perfume that you buy, like say Chanel number 5, it has more beaver castor in it as the price goes up. And that's why beaver castor is so highly sought after from perfume makers.
Beaver castor oil.
Yes, that's correct.
Ken, what books, people, or meetings have most influenced your thinking?
That would be probably books on how to make lures and the habitat of animals. Because if you're going to trap animals, you need to know their habitat.
Ken, is it possible to be a full-time trapper all year round?
Oh, absolutely. If you Google my name on YouTube and then type in "shouldn't be alive," you can see where I was trapped underneath my quad on my trap line for 96 hours. And I lost my good leg. I mentioned to you before I had polio. My good leg was 4.5 inches longer than my polio leg. And it was very, very strong. And before I did that, before I lost that leg, I did a lot of control of animals in the urban system.
To be a trapper, you need physical resilience as well.
Absolutely.
Ken, what skills, experiences, and personal qualities have been key to your success as a professional trapper?
You need skills in navigation. I could get a fire going with very little material quickly. If you're lost, to stay in one location. There's people I told where I was going to go, when I was going to come back. That's key. Wilderness first aid and survival. You need to be able to keep a sharp mind of what's going on around you out there in the wilderness. You need to be able to, if you get injured, take care of yourself. A little bit about mechanics. If there are people out there, there are actually ladies out there that are 16, 17 years of age. They are managing over 100 miles of trap line just with dog team. People think that animals just, they chew their feet off when they're caught in the trap. You take and bite your finger and see how long you're going to chew on it. If it hurts, you're not going to chew on it. We know our species. We know what trap we're going to use. And so for a wolf, for example, I use a restraining trap for a wolf. And I can catch that wolf. And so if you have a pack of wolves that are causing an issue, you can catch them, you can put a collar on them and release them. Then from helicopter, you can follow those and you can dispatch those wolves from a helicopter. So instead of using poison when there's animals out there that are causing a problem, like say preying on sheep, if there's more than 1 or 2 packs in the area, what you do is you catch 2 in each pack and put radio collars on. Well, soon you're going to find out which ones are causing the issue and which ones are not. So you target the ones that are causing the issue. The other ones you leave out there for research. So then you can dispatch the ones in the area that are actually doing the damage. That way you're not using poison, which is a terrible, terrible thing. If you see animals dying from poison, you won't use it again. And so that's kind of how we do the research and you keep a population going.
What advice can you give for somebody wanting to take up trapping?
Number 1, you need to get some basic skills on how to survive on the land. Number 2, if you come there, you need to know the rules and the regulations and what traps are allowed and which ones are illegal. And that's one of the things a trapper needs to know no matter where you're at, because there's people out there who will sell you stuff that is not legal. And we have tried to educate a lot of the companies that sell traps, because there's a lot of stuff that is brought up from the United States, which is totally that they use is totally illegal as well. The right clothing, the right stuff that you need for transportation out there. Because if you don't have that, you can die from hypothermia or exposure quite easily. You need to be here for a certain period of time. You can't just come from another country or another province and get a trapping license to go trapping. One thing that I'll mention is in Alberta, the trapping courses that we teach are recognized right across Canada. So you get a certificate. It has a number that goes on file. And so say, for example, if I wanted to go trap in Manitoba, all I would have to do is go there, get in contact with Fish and Wildlife people and show them my certificate with the number on it.
Ken, how can somebody know that a trapping course is a good course?
You could actually, if you wanted to, you could actually talk to some of the biologists from the University of Alberta or Calgary. We have some involvement with those people. We do a lot of collection of different carcasses so that they can do research on wildlife. Whether the animals are found on the road, they're killed by a vehicle or whatever. One of the reasons why these courses are there is because the province of Alberta and the federal government of Canada has recognized the value that trappers play on the landscape and the value of being properly educated.
Ken, is there anything that you'd like to add?
To get to know a region, if you wanted to trap in a certain region, to get to know the region, to get to know what species are there, and the most humane ways to do that. We need to have respect for the land. We need to have respect for the animals. I love every animal out there. Like, say, for example, I'll give you a good example, wolves. When I got my trap line, I've trapped the same trap line for over 30 years. I've been trapping for 50 years. We never had any wolves on it for the first 20 years. In the last 20 years, I've taken over 206 wolves off of my trap line, all by restraining traps. So that's not the next snare that we have. And that's a thing that people need to understand and realize, that because we want to be humane and treat our animals with dignity and respect, and if we damaged or didn't treat our animals properly, say, for example, there's a misconception that we leave our animals out there in traps for a long time and they starve and they chew their feet off and they damage themselves. What would our pelts be worth? We do a lot of research. As one example, the way they use the castor in different ways, and in medications, in food, to preserve and keep the taste and the texture of food, and for perfumes. These beaver are not just killed and we trap these animals and we sell them. Well, they're a renewable resource. Why not use a renewable resource instead of a byproduct like a fake fur coat, which takes 9 gallons of petroleum to produce? Yes, there are trappers out there that aren't humane. Our association would want to get rid of each and every one of those people because we need to treat these animals with respect. We will have a bad catch. We feel bad about that. Any trapper that has any ethical nature in him will feel bad about that. Yet we realize that sometimes we'll catch a non-target species, but I like for trapping for wolves, if I don't want to catch any coyotes or fox in that, or any bobcats or lynx, I put the pan tension on my trap to around 8-9 pounds. That way a fox, coyote, whatever, they walk right over that trap. They can sniff at that urine that's in their territory and they don't like it, but I'm not going to catch them. Whereas when the wolf comes there, he's going to put his foot down. He's going to put all the pressure, so his foot is committed so that he can't pull his foot back, and I'm going to catch him by a toe. So that makes, I'm going to catch a very humane catch. There's not going to be any damage to that animal, and I can use the product.
Ken, thanks for being on the Practical Animal channel. It's been fascinating. It's been an insight. Ken Hildebrand of the Alberta Trappers Association.
Thank you very much. You have an awesome day.